Okay, here we go. So here's our review. We'll start out with the section 17.1, part 1 notes. So your job is to find the amplitude period, calculate the scale, and then go ahead and sketch the graph. So pause the video, and then when everybody's pretty much done, you can play and you'll hear the explanation. Okay, so the amplitude, remember, is the absolute value of the A value, and the A is the number in front of the trig function. And we said the amplitude should always be positive, so the absolute value of -3 is 3. The period is always 2 pi divided by the number after the trig function. So your B is right here. If there's nothing there, it's understood to be 1. So 2 pi over 1 is 2 pi. So to calculate the scale, it's always the period, which is 2 pi. We multiply by 1/4, so it gives us 2 pi over 4. To get the second one is 2 pi, or the period times 1/2, so it gives you 2 pi over 2. And then get the last value of those middle three, it's the period, or 2 pi times 3/4. It gives you 6 pi over 4. So we have our grid here. I marked off my amplitude up to a +3 down to a -3. I labeled my 5 hash marks, the first one at 0. The middle 3 are the 3 that I calculated, and I went ahead and reduced those. And then the last value is what the period is, so it's 2 pi. Then I look back, it's a cosine, so it crosses at these 2 points, since sine is the origin, middle, end, cosine are the other two. And then to graph, to know whether I start in the bottom corner or top, I look back to my original A. Since it's negative, I start down at that -3, and then I make my hill. Okay, let's take a look at the second one. Same thing, find the amplitude, the period, and scale and sketch. Okay. So our amplitude is the absolute value of 1. And again, if there's nothing there, it's understood to be a 1. The period is 2 pi divided by the B value of 1/4. We said if you're dividing by a fraction, it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So 2 pi times 4/1 gives us 8 pi over 1, which is just 8 pi. We said if you type it into your calculator, okay, don't type in the pi symbol. So you'll type in the 2 and divide it by that fraction. So make sure you put that in parentheses. And it'll give you an answer of 8. And then you need to remember to put the pi symbol back as part of your answer. Okay, so to calculate the scale, it's the period times 1/4, the period times 1/2, and the period times 3/4. So then when I label my, I mark off my amplitude at +1, -1, I have my 5 hash marks. The first is 0, the last is the period, and then the 3 in the middle I just reduced. So that gave me 2 pi, 4 pi, and 6 pi. So then I look back, it's a sine graph. So we cross through at the origin, the middle, and the last value. And then since my original A is positive, I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to go up in a positive direction to the 1, cross through the middle, go down to the -1, and stop at the last point. Okay, so I think we're probably pretty good with that. If you need the extra one, I do have work written on the paper, but I'm going to guess we're probably pretty good. Okay, second slide reviews the matching. So I'm going to give you a moment and see if you can match the 6 graphs, and then we'll go over your answers. Okay, we said start with the graphs that are curviest. So that looks like that would be graphs A and D. So what makes a graph curvier is the number right after the trig function in front of the x. So my first 2 equations are have a B value. They're both cosine. The difference between the 2 is one has an A value of +2, which means it makes the graph taller. This has a negative A value, so it's going to start down at the -1. So we said for the cosine, if you're not adding or subtracting anything, your cosine crosses the y-axis, or starts on the y-axis at whatever the A value is. So since my A value was 2, it started up at the +2. Here my A value is a -1. It started out at the -1. Okay, so we use those 2 graphs already. Then sometimes it might be easier, to look at the ones that has a vertical shift, or we can take a look at this one here. Okay. There's no shifting, so we said the sine graph should cross through the origin. So if we look at our remaining graphs, only one of them is crossing through the origin, and that is F. Okay, and then to verify, it has a -2 as the A value. So that means it's going in a negative direction down to the -2 first. So that's why that matches up with F. Okay, so all the remaining ones have some kind of shift to them. Okay, this is the only one that has a minus. So that means the graph's going to be shifting down. So if we eyeball the graphs that are left, which graph looks like it's primarily below the x-axis? Well, B is completely above, C a majority is above, and E a majority is below. So one thing to check to make sure that you're good is I would just guess or sketch the y equals 3 sine x. So without the minus 2, it's going to start at the origin, and then it's going to go up to a height of 3 and then drop down and look something like that. So then if I shift it down to units 1, 2, okay, I know my graph's not very pretty, but it would match up there. So then that's going to match up with E. Okay. So we use that one. So now what we have left are the graphs C and B. Okay. So this one has a positive 2 in front of it, so it should be a little bit taller graph. And the negative cosine, like a basic cosine is a U-shaped, and negative is going to flip it. Okay. So if we look, the taller of the two graphs is C, and if we double check and just graph 2 sine x, we would start at the origin, go up to a height of 2, drop down. So then if we compare it, I shift it up 1 unit. There we go. It matches, so that should be C. And then if we also sketch just negative cosine, it would start below the x-axis at -1. And now if we shift it up 3 units, 1, 2, 3, it matches up, so then we're good with all of those. Okay, and then our last slide is just practicing our last set of notes. We're going to be writing the equation for the graphs. So we'll take a look at the first example first. Okay, so first we look how many times it crosses the x-axis. Since it's crossing 3 times, it's going to make it a sine graph. Then we need to know our a value. So since it's going in a downwards direction first to that -2, that's what my a value is going to be. And then to find the b value, it's always 2 pi divided by that last value on your x-axis. So 2 pi over 4 pi, pi's cancel out, and 2 over 4 reduces to 1/2. So then our equations go in the y equals our a, which is -2 sine bx, so it's 1/2 x. Okay, and then let's try our last one. Okay, so if we look here, it crosses the x-axis 2 times, so it makes it a cosine graph. We said the a value is wherever you're starting on the y-axis, so since we're starting at a +3, our a is 3. And then our b value is always 2 pi divided by that last value on our graph, or on the x-axis there. So 2 pi divided by pi reduces to 2. So our equation is y equals our a, which is 3, cosine bx, so it's 2x. Okay, so the rest of the time then you can go ahead and work on your study guide, and then we'll go over it next class, answer any questions, and then you'll take your last test of the year. Okay, have a good one.